Welcome to the Transport Committee for the 3rd of March 2026. The agenda item, apologies for absence. I'm sitting in for Councillor Harker. We have apologies from Councillor Furness and Councillor Riddle. That's right, yeah. But I believe we are quorum, so this committee can go ahead. Do we have any declarations of interest? Okay. The minutes of the last meeting, are we happy to confirm them as a true account? I believe there's some action points as well. Is anybody taking the action points, or do you want me to go through them?
I believe they're picked up on the agenda there, but if you want to go through them, more than happy.
So there was some action points from the last minutes. I can see some of them have been addressed. There was an invitation to the Audit and Governance Committee and the Overview and Scrutiny Transport Subcommittee for invitations to the Transport for the North Committee. Is that right? And those emails went out sometime in February. Yeah. Okay. There was another action point regarding the Tees Flex. It's probably a bit of an explanation from the operator as to the decline in numbers. Does anybody want to take that up?
I think we'll pick that up.
Within the
bus report, yeah.
Okay. And there was another action point around the breakdown of bus performance by local authority area. Will that be picked up in the report as well?
Captured on a local authority level.
Okay, brilliant. And there was another action point around timeline of review of bus stops and shelters for members.
Yeah, that's picked up in
that's being picked up as well. Excellent. Okay, so with no further ado, then we'll move on to item 4, which is the bus service update report. This was going to be presented by the new interim director of infrastructure, Jonathan Spruce, but unfortunately he's been delayed. So I believe you're going to be picking this up, Alan.
Emily's going to pick this one up.
Apologies,
on that
Emily.
Basis, so I'll hand over to Emily on that basis.
If you wouldn't mind, thank you, Alan.
So this is in 2 parts. So we've got the local bus service performance first, and then progress towards the B, which I'll get through performance, then pause for questions, and then move on. So through the enhanced partnership, we work with local bus operators to collate, review and analyse bus performance data on an aggregated level. So this is to help us keep track of the network and review passenger trends. So on to bus patronage to start with. So the COVID pandemic did significantly depress patronage with lockdowns and a general reduction in travel. An element of this reduced demand continues, which is a UK-wide trend. So we've got 6 graphs showing patronage trends. So we've got annual patronage, which is figure 1, Tees Valley bus patronage, trips per month, which is figure 2, bus patronage per borough, which is figure 3, concessionary patronage, which is figure 4, Tees Valley concessionary patronage compared to total patronage, which is figure 5, and Tees Valley concessionary patronage as a percentage of total patronage. So looking at annual patronage in figure 1, for the first time since COVID, on a Tees Valley level, the total annual patronage, so this is looking at 24-25, has decreased by approximately 1% in comparison to 23-24. On a local authority level, there's been slight increases in Darlington, Redcar and Cleveland, and decreases in Hartlepool, Middlesbrough and Stockton. So we will hopefully soon be able to report on the 25-26 patronage as well in future reports. Moving to figure 3 in quarter 3, 25-26, so this is today a decrease of 6.11% has been seen patronage when comparing to quarter 3 of last year. On a local authority level, this can be broken down to decreases across all local authority areas, and we've got the percentage split within the report. Through discussions with members of the partnership, the feeling is that this is reduced demand into town centres, which is linked to the decline of the high street. This is supported by data for the 2025 calendar year, which shows that footfall in Middlesbrough town centre, for example, has decreased by 4.8% compared to the previous year. And this is reflected in figure 3, which shows Middlesbrough has the highest decrease of 8.42%. This is a contrast to the national trends, so we've got some statistics in there where city centres remain nearly flat at a marginal 0.2% increase over the same period. So moving to concessionary patronage, which is figures 4, 5 and 6. A key point to note is that the increase in percentage, figure 5, correlates with the decrease in fare paying passengers as an increase in concessionary patronage over the time period, so that suggests a possible change in ticket types, people becoming eligible for their passes. And then we also report on bus reliability. So standard measure of bus reliability is derived by looking at the data for the total scheduled miles, so that's the total miles that a vehicle is timetabled to operate, and comparing that to the total actual miles operated. So the difference between this mileage is referred to as lost mileage and can be down to a number of factors such as staff absence, mechanical issues, traffic disruptions or congestion on the network, which requires services to be rerouted. Trends in bus service lost miles can be seen in figure 7. So localised traffic congestion has an ongoing impact on the bus operations. So in response to this, we are developing a bus priority improvement programme to help bus movement be more efficient across the highway network. So this is a mixture of physical and digital interventions. In addition, working with operators and local authorities, there's an ongoing stream of work to help coordinate roadworks activity. And part of this includes reviewing the process of bus stop suspensions and travel alerts with the potential to automate this system. This is in early stages, but it's had good support from the operators today. So on to figure 7, this shows the total percentage of scheduled miles that were lost, not operated, alongside the reason for reduction. So when compared to last year, for the same quarter, the total lost mileage appears to have reduced as a percentage of scheduled miles. Over the same period, lost mileage attributed to mechanical issues has increased. So it's a slight increase from 0.51% to 0.54%, and this is expected to just be a result of the colder weather impacting mechanics in the buses. Overall, other areas have shown an improvement in lost mileage. So staff lost mileage as a result of staffing decreased from 1.57% to 0.91%. Over the summer this was at 2.5%, so it's quite a positive decrease on that front. We've also got a significant reduction over the period for traffic congestion. On to figure 8, so service punctuality. This graph shows the percentage of services that were on time, and this is on time defined by the Traffic Commissioner standard of departing within the bracket of 1 minute early and 5 minutes late. So all local authorities see changes in punctuality due to various reasons, including traffic congestion at different times of the year. So looking at Redcar and Cleveland in the summer months, and retail centres around the Christmas period. Roadworks can have an impact too, hence the need for a coordinated approach. So on a Tees Valley level, the figure of 81.94% in Q3 represents a substantial increase in punctuality from the 78.01 reported in last year's Q3 period, which is overall positive. We've put some other figures from other authorities in there for reference as well. So looking at the North East, which is Durham, Tyne and Wear, and Northumberland, they decreased from 80% to 78.85% over the same time period. So we're just above the UK average here, about 3% above the UK average. So we all continue to remain below the Traffic Commissioner recommended target of 95%, but overall there's been improvements across the board in punctuality for Tees Valley services. Specifically in Hartlepool, which has seen a 5.35% increase year on year. Moving on to Tees Flex, so we've got a graph showing the number of completed trips each month since the service launched. So just as a reminder on this one, the first 18 months were really impacted by the COVID lockdowns and general disruption to travel patterns. At the 12th of December Cabinet meeting, the decision was made to withdraw Tees Flex from the supported service network, and we're coming on to updates on this within the further sections of the report. On to customer satisfaction, so we use Transport Focus to survey and get feedback from passengers. So they're the independent watchdog for transport users, and they undertake surveys. So this is the Your Bus Journey survey, so it enables us to monitor patronage, passenger satisfaction and give an overall outlook on feelings towards bus service provision across the Tees Valley. So we've got a graph below, I think figure 10, shows that year to date there has been an improvement in overall passenger satisfaction when compared to 2024. And this does correlate to wider investment into bus across the region, so such as the Zebra investment into Stockton's depot and getting new electric fleet in. It's overall been a positive impact across the network. The only point to note is the value for money for the journey, which has decreased in satisfaction, which correlates to the national cap going from £2 to £3. It is mandatory that we take part in this survey as well, so we'll continue to do that over the local authority bus grant period. Finally, on customer satisfaction, our two main operators, which are Aruba and Stagecoach, voluntarily provide data regarding the number of complaints received per quarter. So this is expressed as a percentage of reported quarterly patronage. So it's in figure 11. So for quarter 3 this year, minimal increase of 0.018% to 0.019% was observed, which is demonstrated in figure 11. Again, this could just be a result of the cold weather in services. That's it for performance. Pause for questions.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions on what we've had so far? Okay. I was concerned about patronage. Obviously, it's been falling off. If our town centres continue to decline, is there any type of recovery plan coming from the TVCA to consider what we do about that?
So I think, Joe, the answer to that question is obviously there's a lot of work going on at the moment in relation to the local growth plans, which are the idea of how we kind of grow the local economy and create those kind of opportunities. So I know the teams are working with officers in relation to and members indeed in relation to what those plans are and how we kind of take those aspects forward. So I know there's information forthcoming to Cabinet over coming kind of periods, and we can update on that basis if that's appropriate for this committee and you wish to kind of see that. Obviously in the context of, I think the bus performance report, the challenge is whether those declines are, as Emily said, is kind of recognising that perhaps there's less demand for travel at the moment, and how do we kind of make sure that the demand that is there is kind of satisfied. And I think that's part of the further discussions that are taking place at the moment around the basic plan and how do we make sure that we connect those communities that perhaps don't have those services at the moment.
You know, obviously this is like a national issue, isn't it? A national problem about demand. People have got different consumer habits now, shopping out of town, shopping online. So these are all kind of interesting problems that we're looking at, really.
Yeah, it's national picture in terms of those, like I said, change to consumer demand, change to habits, change to the way in which the economy and society are kind of working at the moment.
Okay. In terms of congestion as well, saying that if congestion is now the main cause of our lost mileage, do we know the specific corridors of what's the worst performing corridors that we've got that we should be looking at then?
Again, I'll take that if that's okay. So M&E's report looks at that at a high level in terms of the information we get in the cause from the data. If you recall, Chair, what we have through the CRSTS delivery plan is a number of priority corridors, and those corridors were the ones that were identified as being, a lot of work was done to identify the kind of delays and the impact. So it's quite a complex kind of picture, but that's why those 9 corridors were identified as being the right corridors for investment. And again, working with officers, there's kind of proposals for a number of physical changes in those corridors to try and ensure that buses aren't delayed within kind of general traffic. And those kind of schemes have kind of been worked up at the moment. They are the schemes that have been consulted upon earlier on in the year. So they're the ones really where we're focusing the investment to try and address those and have an impact on lost miles. And we'll come on to it towards the end of the agenda. There is an increase in focus from government around bus performance as part of the kind of outcomes as we move forward. So it's going to be important that we do work collaboratively and collectively to look at those issues, and are there things that we can do to prioritise bus on certain corridors to enable that those delays don't happen.
Well, I heard on the news just recently as well, there's work there going on with the Morton Crawl. Are you aware of that? Yeah,
there's work on a number of different kind of locations to try and address those kind of challenges. Like I say, that's the one that gets frequently mentioned, shall we say, in Tees Valley, but there are other areas. It can sometimes be small things like how does the bus actually get out of the bus lay-by back into general traffic, which may sound something simple, but actually if it's delayed by half a minute trying to get back out, that's the kind of thing that can have a cumulative effect further downstream. But I think Emily mentioned it there around actually a lot of the work around using digital as well, and a lot of the work around digital twin is showing some really early positive signs that by actually effectively changing the signal timings by really small amounts, we can actually have a massive impact in terms of getting buses back on the journey time and back on time. So it's not a case, as part of tradition in the past, of going in and having to do lots of heavy roadworks and physical change to the highway. There are different ways to try and achieve those benefits as well, often at significantly reduced cost and similar amounts of kind of benefits as well, which obviously represents far more value for me.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Are you continuing with the? You got more.
Yeah.
I've got a question on the Doris, but I guess you're coming to that. Right?
Yeah, I might pause between each of the kind of 5 points on this one, just because there's a lot more information.
Okay, thank you.
So on to progress towards delivering the bus service improvement plan. So an initial overview. So from April 2026, BSIP funding will be replaced by the new local authority bus grant, which is LABG, as part of the consolidated. As part of the consolidated local transport settlement called the Mayor's Transport Fund. So it's been confirmed that TDCA will receive a multi-year funding settlement allocation of just under 26 million for the period of 2026-27 to 2028-29. So this is the equivalent of approximately 8.7 million per year, which is an increase on our previous BSIP allocations of the 25-26, we had 7.3 million. Of BSIP allocated. So with it being a multi-year funding settlement, it provides longer term certainty and enables those local authorities and bus operators to plan further ahead. An element that is also now included in the allocation is capacity and capability funding, plus the former local authority bus service operators grant, or referred to as BSOG, is now rolled up within that LABG allocation. So just in reference to the BSOG, following discussions with local authority officers, it's been identified that for those who receive it, which not everybody does, It was previously allocated to installing bus stop infrastructure maintenance, community bus services and school transport. So those elements will be considered in the plan moving forward. So a full proposed spend plan for the 26-29 period will be taken to the 20th of March, Cabinet for approval. So any provisional allocations towards supported services will be subject to the outputs of the network review. So the requirement of the funding, as was with the BSIP, is that it's used to deliver the current Tees Valley BSIP plan, which sets out actions structured around a 5-point delivery plan. It is also complemented by additional capital investments. So the 5-point plan is sustainable network for the future, improved fare offers, enhanced customer experience, bus priority improvements and decarbonising the bus fleet. So the last 2 points are typically delivered with capital funding and not through BSIP or LABG funding. In view of government priorities, particularly around crime and antisocial behaviour, we are looking to establish a Tees Valley Transport Safety Partnership. So consideration is being made to update the BSIP plan to account for this and essentially make it into a 6-point plan just to account for that additional element. It feels like it's split out from customer experience slightly. So further discussion on this will take place at the next steering group meeting. I'll pause there before I get into services, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah. Any questions there? Okay, if you want to carry on.
Yeah, so on to supported services. So at the 12th of December Cabinet meeting, members agreed to continue the current 13 supported bus services, so this is excluding Tees-Flex, on a temporary basis until at least July 2026, whilst further work was concluded on the network review. Procurements have now taken place for these, so we've awarded contracts listed in point 38, and we've shown the relevant operator as well. Just one point to note on Service 29 is that it will now operate twice per hour to Cypress Road with 1 journey per hour following the existing route, and then going to Colby Newham via the Parkway Centre. So it's a slight amendment on this one. Essentially they've used the resource to create a new connection, so this came as part of the procurement. A response was put forward by Arriva that met the requirements and also ticked off an additional network review request. So it's overall a positive. And then just one point on Service 66A as well. So Darlington Council continue to fund additional enhancements to this route through Section 106 funding. Moving on to Tees-Flex, so the decision on the 13 service extensions. They also decided to no longer continue Tees-Flex, that will be withdrawn from the network from March 2026 onwards. The last day of operations is the 28th of March. So to retain essential connectivity previously provided by the service across areas of high usage, Cabinet agreed to introduce a few new fixed route services which were designed around the evidence demand patterns. So the procurement's now taken place for these routes as well. So we've got a Hartlepool service, which is service 51, a Stockton-Darlington service, which is service X86, and then an additional extension to service 10, which was put in place to serve Sadburge. So in total extensions, so for the 13 extensions plus the newly identified routes coming in place as a result of Tees-Flex coming to an end, represent a £1 million commitment from the local authority bus grant allocation.
Yeah, okay. Have you finished on the Tees-Flex then?
Yes, so network reviews next.
Okay. So have you got any questions on Tees-Flex?
I do, but I'll follow you.
Oh, okay. Okay. So have you got? So it's really about the replacement services. How will they be evaluated to make sure that they're replacing Tees-Flex effectively?
So the way that we've procured them is we've procured them in line with the other contracts, so everything's now in place until July 2026, which enables us to review everything as part of the network review and come and put a proposal forward essentially for the network as a whole, rather than doing like a 4-month contract plus a year contract. So we've aligned them all together and we'll review performance of the routes, promotion with the operators and things like that.
Okay, and that,
I think the challenge, Chair, is that these are new services, and new services we're working on the basis of what we think the demand will be, rather than having the actual kind of period. So as Emily says, these are effectively initially contracted for 4 months, with a view to, following subsequent discussions after this meeting, a view around what do we want to do for the period after July onwards. And I think that part of that conversation will be about how we evaluate all of the services that we propose to fund from August onwards, to ensure that the predictions and the information that we've got around anticipated demand is matched by what actually is happening on the ground, and that performance management of the whole kind of process, whilst recognising, and some of these services now have been funded since 23, 24, that they do take time to embed, for them to become recognised that they are there to stay, and for people to become reliant upon them for their kind of daily business. So there's a huge challenge, I guess, and recognition that this opportunity around having 3 years funding is an opportunity to really give that commitment to provide these services for that kind of duration of funding, but also make sure that what we think will happen if we decide to commit to new services is actually what does happen, and we aren't continuing to get value for money through that kind of period.
yeah, I suppose that, from our point of view, there's a risk. I think there's a risk here that we lose connectivity in our more kind of low density rural areas.
And I guess that's why, and we'll come on to the discussion later on, but that's why I think part of the proposal from the Network Services Review is to prioritise connectivity as the kind of key element, to try and bring those disconnected communities into the network to create those opportunities for journeys that they wish to make.
Okay, and before I bring you in, Councillor McCollum, I've also received a letter from Luke Meyer MP regarding East Cleveland and his concerns around bus connectivity. I'd like that to be submitted to the minutes for next time. There's real concerns in East Cleveland that they are losing vital services.
And I think, Joe, Emily's going to come on to the network review in terms of, Emily will correct me, but it's something in the order of 100 requests for services across the whole of Tees Valley that we've had in the last year. And thank you for forwarding that letter in advance of the meeting. Having had a quick look, I believe that all of those services suggestions have been considered as part of that review, because they've come in from the likes of yourselves or councillors, or directly from the MP. So, as we say, we can talk through each of those kind of proposals and respond accordingly to that kind of approach.
Okay. And before I bring you in, one more. And there was an action point from the last minutes regarding the reasoning around why Stagecoach didn't believe that Tees Flex was worth continuing with. Have you got that as part of the?
Yeah, we've responded to that in the actions. I think there was a response in the action log to that, so we've spoken to Stagecoach and received their feedback. I think it's a mix of things relative just to the operations of demand responsive transport and meeting the demand of people within the resource, provided there is a more detailed response.
Okay, and that'll be on the website as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I think, Joe, it's in part of the paper pack, because it's in part of the action tracker. It's an earlier paper that's included as an action tracker.
Yeah. I saw the reply. I thought it was quite a technical reply, but in a nutshell, yeah, I get it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quartermain, and thank you, Emily, for your presentation. It's been mentioned several times this morning that obviously the decision was taken to stop Tees Flex from the end of this month. Since that decision was taken by Cabinet in December, do you know how much money has been spent on, communicating the decision to users of the service? Clearly, it's going to have an impact, as Councillor Quartermain's made the point, certainly in East Cleveland, where it's been used to supplement supported services. So I'd be curious, because I'll be very honest and very frank about this, I'm not entirely convinced that Tees Valley Combined Authority is doing its duty as a local transport authority with respect to marketing. So the fare offers you have are fantastic. The under-22s, the care leavers package, I know that's been a fantastic piece of work getting the back office sorted so we can promote those things going further, but there's very little in the way of marketing for regular services, and that's the real key of patronage, I would suggest, Chair, is saying to people it's a very valid way of getting around Tees Valley. So I'd be curious to know how much we're spending as a combined authority on marketing and communications in obviously that piece around sustainable network. We need passengers to do that, and making sure that people know that bus services are around is obviously very vital to that. So we'd really love to get a characterisation from you about what this authority is doing to promote it in that stream. Thank you, Chair.
So in terms of services specifically, we tend to promote through the operators, so we'll agree within the contract that they help us promote. So in terms of Tees Flex coming to an end, it's been quite targeted and messages through the app and the call centre just to make sure that we're reaching the customers that are using Tees Flex. There is an allocation in the BSIP, so for 24-25 there was 100k allocated towards marketing, which was largely on the under-22s fares offer, and that then reduced to 50k for 25-26, just because the offer was in place. I think it's something that we can put in moving forward and link into the review as well in terms of requests that we've had in that actually exist, and I think there is a point to know that there need to be more promoted and better people.
Sorry, guys, just let you finish.
Oh, okay.
I think there's an opportunity, Councillor McCollum, in terms of, as we're going to talk about the kind of how we allocate the funding within the teams moving forward. So if that is a desire of this committee to recommend to Cabinet that we spend more on marketing, then that's a conversation we can have about uplifting those kind of values. Completely agree that, like say, in terms of putting the services on, there needs to be that kind of attempt to grow patronage across those kind of services, and we have seen it in some areas. If you recall, the likes of Service 101 with the connectivity to sport has kind of seen significant growth as people rely on that, and I think part of that consideration is, as we say, almost the opposite to the previous problem, which was around what's actually driving that demand. It may not necessarily be visits to town centres, but it may be that opportunity to connect people better to employment opportunities, and focusing on support for the growth aspirations and the growth plans, and making sure that people are aware that those are the opportunities to have if you don't have either access to a private vehicle or have the choice to be able to access via public transport, those things. So aware that there are a number of those conversations and a number of areas about particularly connecting key employment locations, which is where some of the focus of the supported services network has been to date. Thinking of off the top of my head of the kind of Wynyard connection to enable access to employment opportunities there. But yeah, if people aren't aware that those opportunities are there, both from the employer but also more generally, then they may not be applying for those opportunities in the first place.
Sorry, Chair, if I may quickly follow up. Sorry, so how would you characterise the awareness overall within Tees Valley about Tees Flex and it coming to an end, considering that obviously the funding that's been provided for it, subsidised a significant amount of that service to be provided, costing £19.50 odd a head per journey. Do you not think there's a duty on this local transport authority to communicate more broadly about its tactics, about what's available? I would question how much does the public actually know about, how many times has this been mentioned? It's been mentioned in this place quite a number of times. It's been a topic around many a council table, but how much has this authority communicated with the public about it, about the changes that are incoming? If you're struggling, I can tell you according to Tees Valley Combined Authority Facebook, the number of times that Tees Flex has been mentioned since December is 0. The number of times that Tees Flex has been mentioned since the Mayor, Lord Houchin, visited a constituent in July 2025 is 0. I don't think that's a sufficient level of communication about a service that we are providing, that the Combined Authority is procuring and providing. As you said, for connectivity reasons, for reasons that you feel the record, I know that you know what I'm getting on about. It's about growth, it's about that communication piece. Do you think that your efforts today have been sufficient?
So I think I'll take 2 comments on that. I think first, the way in which Tees Flex was set up, that it was very much a collaboration and partnership with the operator, and the contract was set up in such a way that a lot of the promotion of Tees Flex was to be done by Stagecoach as the operator of that kind of service. I think I would characterise the approach subsequently, since December, as being, the importance has been informing those users, and as Emily said, using the app, making sure that everybody that is registered, because anybody who's used the service is registered for the app or on that basis. That has been the key part of the communication, making sure that those users are aware of that kind of change. Obviously we're aware there are a number of users who don't use the app, they access via the call centre, and that's been where the kind of priority focus has been to make people aware of that kind of change.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rowan?
Just to follow up on that, just to follow up on that.
Please push button.
Oh, which one? Oh, right, yeah. Just on the back of that, what's the plan going to be then to raise awareness of these new routes that are replacing Tees Flex? Because I know you've talked about the ones that are commissioned is it June, did you say, or July? July. So how are we going to get that message out to the public that these new services are existing? Surely it can't just be left down to the providers.
You know, there's already been a press release around the new routes coming into place, and we're working really closely with the parish councils as well, because they're doing a lot of work to essentially get the timetables to residents. Stagecoach have done a lot of work as well with schools and key kind of sites across the new routes to engage with them and make sure it works from a timing perspective. And then I think there's a wider piece of work to do once the network review is concluded. So I think just because things aren't actively on Facebook constantly, there is a lot going on behind the scenes to directly reach people that are impacted by the routes through the Tees Flex app or through parish councils and using contacts across the region. But it's a point noted, and I think we can look to do more moving forward with the bus grant funding.
I think in essence, as we move towards that kind of change on the 1st of April, there will be a ramping up of activity around particularly the promotion of the additional services, because like I say, with the focus being on the kind of discontinuation of Tees Flex, it's like ramping up that needs to happen around the alternatives, and like I say, we're kind of starting to move in that direction over the next 4 weeks ahead of that kind of change.
Back on that quickly. So just in the sort of the spirit of cooperation, and from a Stockton perspective, and I don't want to talk for the authorities, but I'm assuming they won't disagree. When those comms are going out, etc., I'll give our comms team head up in Stockton and say, right, can you share that as well? So when you are doing that, if you're aware of it, please just send me an email. I'll make sure I chase it with our comms team to get that message out as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and this will be collaboration. Our comms team will be liaising directly on relation to that as well, but appreciate it that that's helpful to reiterate that, and particularly raising that profile with board members as well, because sometimes we're conscious that they're not necessarily always aware of what's happening in those kind of areas as well. And so yeah, I think you're right, Councillor Rowling, that it's a collaborative effort to make a success of these things. So and if we are missing things, there are ideas that you have that can help to kind of promote those, then we're more than happy to kind of look at those suggestions moving forward as well.
Okay, yeah, and thank you for those questions. I always say you can have the best services, the best products, but if they're not advertised, they're not marketed, no one's coming, no one's buying. So I think it was a very fair point. Emily, do you want to continue your report? Thank you. From network review.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're on to the network review. So in anticipation of the now confirmed local authority bus grant funding and in light of the withdrawal from Tees Flex, we are currently carrying out a review of all supported service enhancements plus additional requests that we've received. So the Tees Valley Bus Supported Network Review identifies the connectivities provided across the commercial bus network alongside actions taken to date to provide coverage in areas of need via supported services, which are those listed earlier in the report and are funded by our BSIP allocation. So discussions with local authority officers, bus operators and transport committee members over the recent period have enabled input into the decision-making process and allowed us to generate a proposal of a scoring methodology. So this is to be used across all service requests and current service enhancements. And this is essentially a data-driven decision-making exercise to help Cabinet make an informed decision on which services are to receive support from July 2026 onwards. So on to the review itself. External consultants were commissioned to assist with the network review using Padaris. So Padaris is a cloud-based platform which has been designed to support the transport network planning and accessibility analysis. So we got a free trial to essentially use this, and we've used it going forward for the network review. So we've looked at an analysis on the general network and the service level of our supported bus services currently in place prior to the April 2026 timetable changes. So this does not include the Tees Flex replacement routes, but it gives us a baseline for comparison once remaining requests and suggestions have been refined. So overall, the analysis has shown a positive impact across various metrics in the Tees Valley. So there's been increases in the stop frequency analysis and the proximity analysis. And we've also got this mapped as Appendix 1 on a local authority level. So the draft paper was issued to Transport Committee members and bus operators on the 30th of January, and then this was followed up with in-person feedback sessions from the 6th to the 12th of February, so local authority specific sessions. Following a review of feedback, a consolidated list of proposed interventions to be taken forward will be presented to Transport Committee members at the workshop following this meeting, which will help enable advice to Cabinet for the 20th of March decision on local authority bus grant funding. So we'll get into the detail on this one in a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Any questions here? Councillor Ryan.
They should put it on this time, right? Can you hear me? No? There we go. Just in terms of, I know we're going to go into a more depth discussion later on in terms of some of the routes, but just a bit of feedback really, because I think it was completely squarely we sort of went through the list and, in terms of Stockton anyway, and actually I think in that meeting we were pretty much of a similar view in terms of like, sort of myself, Andrew, and the officers. So that to me suggests that like the sort of the research, the methodology is on the right track. So I had sort of a degree of confidence in terms of the process being carried out. Doesn't mean I agree with everything, but on the whole I thought it was worth pointing out that actually I do have that confidence that the work, it sounds really patronising when I said the work's been done. I know it's been done, but it suggests we're getting to the right sort of outcomes. So I think it was just worth noting, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So on to fares offers.
Sorry, Emily.
Sorry.
I've got some questions. On Padaris, for instance, it says consultants have been using that software. I was interested in the weighting, what kind of weighting it gives to things like social value and deprivation. Is that within the software?
Yes, so it's part of the software, so we added a social value metric to the scoring process following the feedback sessions. So from memory, and I don't have it in front of me, I think we took 10% off the value for money and added that to the social value, so it is considered. I think the important point to note is it's more just trying to put a point forward of this is where everything lies in the network. The score isn't the final results of the review, and there's been a lot of work as well, just trying to find the context of the services. So something in a rural area might score quite low. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be supported because it's the context around it. That's just as important as that methodology process.
Okay, and will we see a full cost per passenger and subsidy per journey prior to the cabinet decision in July?
I think a lot of this is in the data provided already on the report. It's slightly more difficult to predict for completely new services where we don't know what the patronage is going to be in comparison to stuff that is established across the network, but I think that information is in the pack provided for the informal committee.
Okay, thank you.
So obviously, just for clarity, what we've put in the pack for subsequent discussion is estimates. We will need to make sure that through the procurement process that those estimates are accurate. And of course, there is always a risk as to whether operators will bid for those procurement packages that we put out there as well. So we can get into the details subsequently, but just want to clarify that because I think that's what you were getting at in terms of the actual cost. I think what I would say is that we have a high degree of confidence in the estimates that we've put forward. If I recall, back in December when the cabinet decision was made, the estimated cost was about £1.4 million. That was for the T-Flex replacements and the 13 services. They've been contracted at just a shade over £1 million. So relatively comfortable that our estimates are around the right kind of mark and probably over edge. Yeah, I'm not going to commit that they will be for this one, but these are a bit more complicated. But just to try and give some of that reassurance that we do tend to leave a little bit of contingency in there to make sure that we're overestimating and can bring in on that basis.
Okay. Any more comments, Councillor?
Sorry, just one, and I realise this may be answered in the informal workshop afterwards, but for example, in Darlington to Stockton, we have the 6A, 6B, which obviously procured by combined authority, but enhanced by Section 106 funding secured by Darlington Borough Council. It's something that we got a lot of praise for from the Overview and Scrutiny subcommittee on transport, so I hope that the councils will be looking at us with a slight bit of envy and a bit of best practice searching. Can I ask about the status of this enhanced service going forward? Is the proactivity of Darlington Borough Council going to be to our detriment in terms of securing an enhanced service which has seen an increase in patronage? So are we going to be penalised for securing this funding ourselves to provide it for a short time, for not forever, but where enhancements are proven to be, beneficial, it's attracting patronage. It's very much appreciated by residents in those areas, including, the kind of rural corridor through Darlington to Stockton. Can I get some assurance that it's not going to be, something that we come to regret in terms of an enhancement that we can't continue to provide for beyond the S106 pot? Thank you.
Yeah, I welcome the comment of Councillor McCullum in terms of the approach in terms of securing 106 is welcome because it provides that opportunity to enable residents of those new housing areas to access those bus services through that element. So I think that is a welcome kind of condition that you've adopted that kind of approach. I think you're alluding to some of the choices that need to be made in relation to a particular service. So if it's okay, I'll defer that comment until afterwards, but I think recognising that there is an opportunity there to attract private funding rather than public funding to enhance services is an approach that we've kind of welcomed because it means we can use the public funding for doing other things in kind of other parts as well. And it would mean also that if we were able to secure additional private funding from other developments or other parts of Tees Valley as well, we'd be able to further bolster the kind of supported network that we have out there. But I know that doesn't always work for all developments for various kind of reasons.
Okay, Emma, thank you.
So on to fares, starting with the 21 and under fares offer. So this has been in place from June 2024 and it's currently secured until the end of March 2026. So this enables young people aged 21 or under across the Tees Valley to travel for £1 single or a £3 all day pass. So as part of the comprehensive spending review, the £3 cap, which is the national cap, was extended until March 2027. So this does give us more long-term certainty around the scheme costings, which is why it was continued until March 2026. So a further extension until March 2027 or beyond would be considered as part of the local authority bus grant funding. It is slightly tricky with that national cap kind of currently ending midway through the bus grant programme. So it might be something that we agree for a year and provisionally agree for the remaining 2 years if it's something that is taken forward. So uptake has continued to increase since implementation, and it's displayed in the trend line outlined in figure 12. So there was dips in August and a peak in September which mirror student demographic return to education. So when looking at Q3 journeys from 2025 compared to Q3 journeys from 2024, there was a 24% increase in scheme usage. We expect this to be a result of changing ticket types rather than increased patronage as a whole. We've got that demonstrated in the graph of figure 12. So on to Care Leavers Bus Pass, which is the Tees Pass bus offer. So following approval at a previous Cabinet meeting, we launched a Care Leavers Bus Pass offer which enables care leavers across the Tees Valley, so they're aged 18 to 25, to travel for free on local Tees Valley services. And we developed this using a Tees Pass smart card, so they kind of tap on when they want to make that journey. So the scheme is based on paying for the passes as well as reimbursing the bus operators for the cost of the journeys made using the pass. So we have a new back office system to deliver this, and the local authorities support in terms of getting people to apply and assist with us getting into touch with the eligible care leavers, helping them with the applications. So the scheme launched from the 17th of November and a further extension again until March 2027 or beyond would need to be considered as part of the local authority bus grant funding. In terms of usage to date, 220 eligible care leavers have registered with our card supplier and have been sent their Tees Pass. This has resulted in 2,393 journeys being made up until the end of January. So in total we estimated around 1,300 care leavers across the Tees Valley in total. And the local authorities are all essentially sitting with them to apply and making sure that they're eligible. There's photos and things on the passes, so they're walking them through that process. So uptake today is relatively in line with what we would expect for this one. Any questions on that?
Any questions there? That's right.
I should really answer this. I'm sure I've read somewhere, or someone's told me, or I think maybe the leader of our council actually, wasn't there some conversation about extending this scheme to include the North East Combined Authority as well, so they could get regional travel? Is there any update on that?
No conversation that I'm aware of to include the North East, so they have a separate care leavers offer, but I think it's quite limited, theirs, and I think it was only allocated to a certain amount of care leavers. There is certain exemptions for cross-boundary travel, but that's usually if it's the journey starting or ending within the Tees Valley, so we're confident with what we're reimbursing the operators, so they couldn't, for example, go to Newcastle and use it on services there.
Okay.
So we're moving to the customer experience point of the BSIP, onto timetable printing, posting and the rebrand. So within the BSIP there's an aspiration to enhance the customer experience, and a key part of this is to provide accurate and up-to-date information under one brand and identity. So this is in specific reference to the actual timetables at stop. So we previously agreed that the TDC would take on the responsibility for the provision of at-stop information, and as part of this we have rebranded the template to adopt a new consistent approach to printing and posting and the information out there to the public. So the rebranded template is implemented into the live system, and since June 25 all prints have been, all service changes have been printed within the new template.
and it continues to be rolled out across Tees Valley. The last element of the rebrand was the Middlesbrough bus station board, which was slightly more complex, but this was implemented into the live system in January, so the inserts are now on site at Middlesbrough in the new branding. So since April 25, around 2,600 attempts across the Tees Valley have been made by our external supplier, who are external, and out of these, just over 2,000 have been successfully posted, with over 600 unsuccessful postings. This is a slight increase in comparison to 24-25, with the figures shown below in the graph. So we're continuing to work with local authorities to reduce the number of unsuccessful postings. We do get posting reports each time, which essentially advise us on the reason for not being able to put the information at stop. We expect, as well as being additional issues caused by poor weather across the winter months. And we've got split per local authority demonstrated in that table. So with the new rebranded template, we're aiming to carry out a sweep up exercise. So essentially any service that has changed since June or July 2025 has been printed in the new Tees Valley template, but if the service hasn't changed, then it'll still be on site in the Connect branded insert. So since we've kind of phased the rollout of the new template, we're looking to essentially do that full replacement now and put the Tees Valley templates out across all stocks where possible. We do have some changes coming at the end of March, which we're hoping to kind of do this full sweep up in tandem with, but stocks where service timings will, where service times are changing will remain the priority. So we're going to prioritise stocks where the information changes over rebranding what's there, but the rebrand is still being worked on. So using the posting reports after each timetable change, a key reason for unsuccessful postings is typically down to no infrastructure being available, which it remains the responsibility of the relevant local authorities. So we do work with them each time we get a posting report back to communicate the reasons why we haven't been able to get to stop. And to be honest, they're all really helpful in getting information back out there or fixing issues on site. So we can get information in the cases. And then we've got a table showing the relative change in posting success compared to July and September 2024. So there's an improvement in Darlington, a modest improvement in Stockton, but Middlesbrough, Hartlepool and Redcar declined slightly when compared to the baseline. Overall, Tees Valley shows a small improvement of 0.7%, and this is shown in figure 13 of the report. So to continue improving this service, investment will be required at stop for the infrastructure, with the basic funded condition survey now complete. This is helping to inform discussions on what work needs to take place at stop to ensure that we can get information to the passengers.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, I mean, this is one of my favourite subjects, making sure, for me it's, it's always how much respect we can give to our passengers in terms of where they're waiting, how much information they can get, how clean the shelters are and all that kind of thing. I do wonder, because it seems to take a long time to roll this stuff out. Every time we have a timetable change, then it seems that we're going to be behind the curve in getting that information to the stops, to the shelters. Which brings me on to how much funding is allocated to bus shelters. I think it's a million. And I suppose what I'm saying is, do you believe that £1 million then is enough to get this information out there quickly enough?
Thanks, Chair. So I think there's two aspects to that. One is in relation to the need to invest in the infrastructure, which is the capital allocation that you're referring to of £1 million. And I think that's a discussion that we need to have with each and every local authority in relation to whether we think that needs to increase to get everything to the right kind of baseline. I think the point around how long it takes to update the information, the at-stop information, is one of the key challenging ones, because Emily will correct me, but is it in excess of 2,500 stops that we have total?
Yeah.
So we have over 2,500. So if it is a major timetable change, and often when we say a major timetable change, that can be buses retimed by 1 or 2 minutes, but can affect a substantial number of those 2,500 stops. So it's being able to have that resource that is able to ramp up and be able to process that very quickly, but not needed all the time. And I think we can further improve that, so that we can, the objective ideally would be to get those changes notified and in stop within a really short period of time. And I think that's a lessons learned for us since we took over kind of doing that, providing that service, that we want to make it smarter. I think it's a challenge that the committee have given us in the past. We're not quite there yet, but it is definitely aligned with that aspiration that we want passengers to know within 2-3 weeks ideally of that change, even sooner if we can do it. But in 2 or 3 weeks of that change, that they know that has been kind of retimed. But that's the scale of the challenge around how do we, the March timetable change is probably about 500 stops, I think, affected.
Yeah.
Something in that order.
I think just to add to that, we get the same amount of time, whether it's a change impacting 2,000 stops or a change impacting 10. So we tend to get the information in. It's like that 6-week mark when it's registered with the traffic commissioner. That's when the final change is agreed. So we'll start producing the information immediately from there. And it then needs to be like route ordered, printed, sent to externature, and then delivered to stop. So it's a lot more complex if it's a large change, because it's the same amount of time we're working with. But I think I'd echo Alan's points that it's one we want to improve on.
And it goes back to the earlier point from Councillor McDonald in terms of if we want people to use these services, they need the information about exactly where they're doing. So the sooner we can bring that in when a change happens, then the better for all kind of concerned, because everybody's aware of that change and we avoid that frustration. But like I say, that's the scale of the challenge. I think March is something in the order of 500 stops kind of affected, so that's relatively small. We'll kind of try and do that, but it's definitely an area we're focusing on moving forward.
Yeah, I think moving forward it's something that, we're very strong on this committee, and it is about upkeep and standards and all of those things that come, when you're stood in the cold waiting for a bus to come, it's about your environment as well.
It's the front of the house, it's the important, it's the gateway onto the bus network, so it's important that it looks right that the way through from shelters to bus flags, which Emily's going to come on to. Actually, the condition of what the poster case looks like, if it's graffitied and or being scratched and you can't see the information that's inside it, then that's another challenge. So yeah, it's an area that we've got a lot of catch up to do from over a number of years, and the opportunities there to bring it all together. And I'm not saying that, as part of a 3-year plan, I'm not saying that we're going to invest, it's going to take 3 years, but as part of a 3-year plan to now start to look at bus as a whole and start to plan longer term and identify those things that we can do right at the start of that 3-year programme and those things that kind of then continue on through that 3 years as well.
Oh, hang on. I'll do it every time I'm sat here. Okay, Emily, go carry on. Any more questions? Okay.
We're on to bus flags, bus stop flags then, which Alan referenced. So this is a service that essentially came over to TVC in April of last year, and since it kind of came over, we did recognise that a significant number of flags across the region were damaged, outdated, missing. So it kind of reinforced the need for a full replacement programme to make sure that stops have that information. So we have developed a proposal for a full flag rebrand and replacement programme, and a procurement exercise is being carried out to bring in a supplier to complete this for us, so they'll be printing the flags and also installing them at stop where possible. So we are awarding the contract for this at the minute, so as soon as possible we'll provide a programme of works to members detailing this. So where infrastructure is unavailable, the newly rebranded flags would be provided to the local authorities for installation. So we do have this detailed kind of within the condition survey of where the infrastructure is not available. But anywhere that there is infrastructure, our supplier would attempt to put it up and remove the Connect branded flag. So we have a design shown in point 71, so this is being developed with communications, disability groups, bus operators and local authority officers. So it's trying to essentially improve visibility, ensure accessibility, remove unnecessary text so we're not having to update things if stop names or services change, for example. And this will hopefully help minimise future maintenance requirements. So following the completion of this one-off programme, the installation responsibilities would revert back to the local authorities under a standard business as usual process. So essentially we're hoping to refresh it all, and then it would be, if the new stock's installed, back to that usual process of us producing the flag to then have it installed by the relevant authority. Moving to shelters. So expenditure surveyed all active bus stops in the Tees Valley. All was more was 3,700, with a comprehensive set of results being provided in late summer. So these results were circulated to the local authorities to review, so they could make urgent improvements when necessary. So if something's come back as structural damage, that has been fed back. So we do need to work in conjunction with the partnership to agree a prioritisation plan for shelter investment aligned to the CRSTS programme for bus priority improvements. And then we've just got a point around the £1 million we've got in CRSTS capital funding, which Councillor Quartermain referenced earlier. So this is set aside specifically for shelter investment. We don't think this amount would cover a full local authority replacement or refurbishment programme, so the process would be focusing on the areas of highest impact. So consideration is being given to increasing the amount of funding for this being reallocated from within the CRSTS bus investment theme. So it's intended that the ongoing maintenance of any new assets would then remain the responsibility of the local authorities, as is currently the case, which is something to consider if investment goes in terms of the maintenance requirement of those new assets. In terms of this programme of work moving forward, following discussions with the local authorities, Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council have agreed to take forward the development of this aspect of work on TBCA's behalf. So they're going to be looking to do a pre-tender market engagement exercise with suppliers to understand the market's appetite for a future procurement exercise that will cover the local authority owned and maintained bus shelters. This would complement the Clear Channel UK contract that we have in place, or Bauer Media now, they've rebranded, which covers 411 sites across the Tees Valley. So that is not including Middlesbrough, because Middlesbrough have their own contract. So this contract, as it is, as we're not the highway authority, there's been a requirement to get licence for works across all the relevant local authorities. So these have now all been signed off, and the contracts with Bauer Media. On to real time.
I've got one question there on the shelters. I mean, obviously you've alluded to the fact that that £1 million isn't going to cover it. So I suppose how far does that £1 million stretch? Do we have a baseline for each shelter? Do we understand the unit price so that we can put a value on all our shelter network?
I think it kind of depends what type of shelter we would want, so we could look at producing a plan essentially for a standard shelter and what that would cost. But it might be that, for example, 50 shelters just need new timetable cases and not whole new shelters. So I think this would come out with a pre-tender market engagement in terms of what a supplier could provide and the costs, and we could reference that back to the survey.
I think that would be interesting if that piece of work can be done. In terms of the new shelters and the real-time passenger information, is that going to be a standard new shelters?
I'm coming on to real time. So I think where possible. So do you want me to go the real
Yeah,
time
go
section? Yeah. So the iConnect back office system is fully live and supporting real-time bus information across the Tees Valley. So this was the initial phase one of the investment of replacing the current screens that were already on site across the region. So there has been some issues noted with the information reported through iConnect. So for example, some of the screen is not working and it's shown as operational, so we then have to send the supplier out to double check that. And it's typically due to a physical on-site issue, like a wire coming loose. But we do pick that up quite quickly. I think we've learned to not fully take what iConnect is saying as gospel and kind of send the supplier out to double check. So previously reported issues of Aviva's data feed into the real-time system has been resolved, and both Aviva and Stagecoach are now providing their data directly to the system. So in terms of future development work has been taking place to progress phase 2 of real-time across the Tees Valley. So this would seek to expand essentially the number of screens that stop across the region, and this needs to be considered alongside the bus shelter improvement programme. So that point around new shelters, considering making sure that they've got a power source so real-time could be put in or is put in at the same time. In addition to screens located within shelters, we have worked with Durham County Council to provide a temporary fix to the real-time screens hosted at Middlesbrough bus station. So this was just a temporary back office fix, but we recognise that there is a need to essentially replace the on-site equipment as well. So we're looking to develop options to upgrade this at the bus station, recognising that this needs to kind of connect with the TCR investment or improvements to the asset.
Okay. Any questions there? Okay.
Just coming in specifically on your point, Council, of course, mate. I think no, not a standard with RTPI, because there is a lot of work to kind of roll out RTPI. So I think phase 2 is starting to identify the priority areas. Obviously, they are likely to be the high volume use kind of stops. Let's get through that. That as a kind of priority, but also looking at the infrastructure that's needed, because often the challenge with RTPI is finding the power to be able to put in there. So it's a kind of part of a holistic kind of solution. Just for awareness, there is also guidance expected shortly, possibly along the alongside the international integrated national transport strategy, which will start to set out some of the expectations and requirements, particularly around accessibility at bus shelters, bus stops and bus information. So it's something that we're just kind of waiting to see what's going to come from that around the guidance, but there's definitely a desire of government to increase inclusivity of bus travel and bus information. It's something we'll obviously welcome that guidance to ensure that we meet that kind of requirement.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Last one, on to Zebra. So as reported earlier in 2024, TVCA secured 7.8 million in Zebra 2 funding. So Zebra is the zero emission bus regional areas, which is essentially funding for electrical vehicles and the infrastructure across Tees Valley depots and services. So the initial bid was for 40 Zebras or zero emission buses to be introduced to the Stagecoach Stockton depot, and then for 21 buses to be introduced to the Aviva North East Darlington depot. So the Stagecoach bid was originally for 40 vehicles, but they have now fully electrified the whole Stockton depot, and they're in the process of actually redoing the building itself as well. The second part, the Aviva work commenced in December 2025, and the buses have been ordered and they're expected to be in service from September 2026. The timeline for this has slipped slightly due to unforeseen complications. It was around agreeing the off-site cable route with Darlington Borough Council and Northern Power Grid. So it's a slight extension on what they previously planned for, which has pushed the project back slightly, but it's on track to be delivered across 2026. We do have aspirations to fully electrify fleet or further electrify fleet across the region. and essentially build on that initial investment that has been received through the Zebra 2 funding and operator match funding. So DFT did reach out to local authorities to see if they could increase the scope of Zebra 2, and both the Reaver and Stagecoach were interested, so we did put something forward for consideration, but we've not heard anything back on that aspect yet.
What were they offering?
So it was increased services in Darlington, and Stagecoach wanted to look at doing Hartlepool depot.
Extra funding?
Yeah, so essentially I think it's basically underspend from the Zebra 2 project that has been made available again.
These things often happen where the department will ask, if we were to make this funding available, what might be your interest? So I think it's often circumspect, but can also sometimes be used to help inform their own internal bidding for what they might require for a future round. So that's one aspect, but we're also continuing to look internally and look at future programs to see whether there's something that we can do within our existing funding rounds to support those further decarbonisation aspects as well.
Okay. Any questions already? I was going to ask about the total regional fleet. What sort of size of fleet are we looking at?
Around 300 vehicles across all depots.
Okay. Right, thank you very much, Emily. I was going to say, we're an hour and 15 minutes in. Shall we take a 5-minute comfort break?
Can I just interject one bit? I think, Joe, Emily's kind of brushed over this in the report, but I think it is useful to look at the maps appended to this report, just in terms of, just as a broad overview, so as it says in the key, the grey area is a commercial network, the green area is effectively what those communities that we're able to connect from the investments that we're making currently for 25-26 through those kind of supported networks. And I think when you start to look at that in map form, I do think it gives a really interesting indication of how many additional communities we're able to connect on that kind of basis. And they've been produced for each area as well as a kind of global Tees Valley kind of basis as well.
Okay. All right, thank you, Aaron. Right, we'll take 5 minutes.